I'm trying not to sweat my intros so much. I'm trying to make them more succinct and also just like be a little freer with them, not feel like so like I have to be on point every single minute. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carrie. This is where I talk about knitting and crafting. And today we're gonna have a little fun. I'm going to answer 20 or more questions for knitters. You'll get to see some of my past projects, you'll hear some of my opinions, some of my preferences, and maybe get to know me a little bit better. So if you want to find out some interesting things, maybe some fun things, have a little fun today, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and let's answer questions about knitting. Or me as a knitter. Don't know what I'm saying. Before we get into all the fun, a couple quick things. One, I probably will have timestamps down in the description box. If there's like some question you're just dying to know the answer to, there will be some timestamps down in the description box. But also, down in the description box, you will find a list of materials I use in today's video, as well as some affiliate links. If you click on an affiliate link, it'll take you to a website where you can do some shopping. Buy a few things for yourself. And I might then earn a small commission, which helps support my channel. If you use one of my affiliate links, thank you so much. It's so greatly appreciated. And if you don't, it's all good too. In fact, I'm just happy that you're here watching a video. We'll see how this goes, but I do have a project with me so that I can knit and talk at the same time, as I often do with these more talky, chatty videos. And what I'm working on right now is the Aberline scarf by Amy Snell, the Devious Knitter. This project was actually picked by you for me to start knitting, and I have really enjoyed working it so far. It's a nice pattern because it's one of those patterns that's actually pretty easy to memorize, and it has just enough like kind of rest rows of stockinette with still interesting things going on with the eyelets and doing increases every other row. So this is what I'm going to work on for at least part of the video. We'll see how it goes. All right, first question, English or Continental? Well, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I am an English knitter. I hold my yarn in my right hand. If you are not new to my channel, you already knew the answer to this question, but I think this is a really good question to ask any knitter. One of the reasons actually that inspired me to start my channel was to be an advocate for English knitting. And not to say that you should knit English over Continental. Everyone should knit the way that is most comfortable for them and gets them the results they're looking for. Man, because I'm not watching as I'm knitting. I'm looking up a lot. I keep dropping stitches. But if you are an English knitter, I felt like you were always finding videos on Knit Faster Continental, Knit Faster Portuguese, but you're never seeing videos like Knit Faster for English knitters. Well, there are some, but there just weren't a lot. And I was like, no, there needs to be more people talking about the positives of knitting English. If you'd like to know more about why I prefer English over Continental, I have a video on that. I'll link all these videos down below. I do sometimes employ Continental knitting. Usually if I'm doing some one-by-one ribbing, there are times at Continental, there are advantages to Continental knitting. And I'm really glad I know how to knit both ways, and I know how to knit Portuguese. They're all tools in my toolbox, but I am primarily an English knitter. So yeah, how do you knit? What's your favorite way of knitting? Have you learned multiple ways to knit? Do you want to learn multiple ways to knit? Next question. How did you learn to knit? Oh, okay, so for this, I'm gonna have to put my knitting down for a second, and I'm gonna pull out this book. So when I learned to knit, I really learned to knit from books. When I started to learn to knit, it was before YouTube. There was no YouTube. You had to learn, either you learned to knit by going to classes at an LYS, like a friend or relative taught you, or books. I learned from books. I learned from books, and my first knitting book, this isn't the only book that I learned to knit from, but I bought this book, The Complete Encyclopedia of Needlework. It was written in like the late 1800s, and it has like everything in it. everything. Macrame, crochet, tatting. I learned about different needlework stuff from this book I had never learned before. This was my only knitting book for a long time. It did demonstrate both Continental and English style knitting, but here's the funny thing about this book. It was written in the late 1800s, and I affectionately call it the asbestos book, because in this book, there are tips about when you are doing your needlework, having a little bag of asbestos next to you to dip your fingers in to keep your fingers dry. Please do not have little bags of loose asbestos near you when you craft. We now know better. All right, next question. What is your favorite type of thing to knit? Oh, wow, that's a toughie. So I would say on whole, I prefer knitting smaller items over like garments, like knitting sweaters and cardigans. It's not that it doesn't hold appeal to me. It's more that it doesn't hold my attention. Attention is an issue. I like kind of the more instant gratification of knitting smaller items like hats and gloves and socks and scarves and shawls, accessories. But yeah, my favorite thing to knit are smaller items just because I get through them more quickly. Theoretically speaking, I get through them more quickly. How many current whips do you have? Oh, wow, do I feel called out right now? I feel so called out. How many whips do I have right now? And what am I going to count as a whip? Because I have some whips that might be more abandoned objects that I'm just not willing to call them. But my official whips right now, what I'm going to consider my official whip count. I have a blanket that I've been working on now for years that I talked about in videos. This pair of socks I'm so close to finishing. What else? Is that it? 3 things? Oh, and a hat. I started a hat. So I have at least 4 of, oh, and then the Tunisian crochet blanket, and then the Tunisian crochet shawl. So that's at least 6. Oh, and my tunic. Don't forget that I'm a little stalled on. I just need to finish already. Like that's like, so 7. I have at least 7 whips. 1 for each day of the week. Ah! What's the first thing you ever knitted? Such a boring answer. I knitted a scarf. But I was so clueless about what to do with like loose ends and everything that when I had to change like my ball of yarn, I made a knot. But yeah, that was the first thing I ever knitted, was a scarf. What's the thing that I've knitted? What's the thing that you've knitted that you're most proud of? Oh, there's so many. There's so many. I designed this sock. It is knit from the toe up to the calf. I call it maypole, and I love it. I love this pattern. I charted out all of the increases here to make sure this worked out, and I just love it because I feel like it's just this fantasia of these like little bell motifs with the insertion of these lacy motifs as well. I loved that I planned the whole thing out before I started knitting it, and yeah, I love this sock. I think this might be one of the best things I've ever done. Next question, what is your oldest whip? I have this. Okay, so my oldest whip is this right here. This is my old, I don't know if it's really a whip at this point or an abandoned project. I probably should count it as an abandoned project, but this was the first time that I attempted to knit a garment. It's a t-shirt. I got this pattern out of a magazine. Like, this was my early 20s when money was tight, and I really splurged on the magazine to get this pattern. And it's cool. I screwed up the lace, although maybe I didn't. Wow, I haven't looked at this in so long. And so it's all knitted. It's all knitted. The only thing I need to do to finish this project is to do the seams. Now, this project did come with sleeves. Like, this is a set-in sleeve. But I did abandon knitting the sleeves, and I was like, I'll just make it a tank top, right? And there were reasons for that. Let's just put it that way. There were reasons. But all I need to do is mattress seam the sides. And this has never been completed because I, for a long time, couldn't do a mattress stitch. I could never understand how to do a mattress stitch reading books. And I didn't want to ask anyone, and I just decided, well,
I hate sewing, and I'm not interested in any project where I have to sew.
Well, eventually I like swallowed my pride and I took a class on sewing knitwear, and when I did, I was like, oh, I don't hate sewing at all. This is fine. I can totally do this. So all I need to do is seam together the sides and this will be done. And it won't be an abandoned project, and it won't be my oldest whip. By the way, how old is this? It might be 20 years old. It might be 20 years old. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. Fine, judge me if you must, but please be kind in your judgments. Think kindly of me in the future. What is the oldest ball of yarn in your stash? I have no idea. I really don't. I don't know why I even wrote that question down. How many needles do you have? Is it enough? Oh my God, why did I ask myself this question? I have a lot of needles. I have more needles than I can count. I don't know why I thought I could count that. Like come up with that answer or would spend the time counting it. I've got a lot of needles. Do I have enough needles? What's enough? Like what's enough? What is? What it is? What is enough needles? Probably I could very easily spend the rest of my life knitting, be able to do any kind of project and just use the needles that I have. Do I have enough needles? Technically, sure, okay. But do I have all the needles that I would want? No. I mean, I'd like to have more square needles. I'd like to have more square needles in DPNs, because I do like DPNs. But I love having knitting needles. I love buying knitting needles. You know, some people are addicted to buying yarn. And trust me, I love buying myself some yarn. But I really love buying needles. I don't know why. I might have a needle problem. All right, I'm going to start this purl row. I got to start it. Okay, favorite knitting needle material and least favorite. My favorite knitting material is metal. I just want the fastest material I can have. That's what it comes down to. My least favorite material, bamboo. Oh my God. I hate bamboo needles. I hate them. I call them the devil sticks. They are slow. They are grippy. I do not look, and if you enjoy bamboo, maybe there's a trick that I'm missing with them, but every time I knit with a bamboo needle, I want to choose violence. I don't choose violence, but I want to choose violence. Who is your favorite knitting guru? Who is your favorite knitting guru? Oh, that's another tough question. I asked myself some really tough questions when I brainstormed this. I feel like I should say that Kate Atherley is my favorite knitting guru because she follows me on Twitter. I'm like starstruck every time she responds to a tweet of mine. You know what I mean? I'm just always like, oh my gosh, Kate Atherley is talking to me on Twitter. I do love Kate Atherley. I've learned a lot from her. Just some video classes that I've taken of hers and just stuff on Twitter and everything. But my favorite knitting guru is probably Lucy Neatby. I don't know. Maybe it's the hair. Maybe it's the wild abandon with the clothes. Maybe it's that she has taught me some of my favorite tips or tricks. But I just love Lucy Neatby. She's lovely to watch. I love the way she explains things. So yeah, there's so many great, this is the thing. This is one of the things that I do love about being a knitter today versus when I first started, is that there's so many more resources to learn about knitting and have easier access to really knowledgeable knitters. You don't just have books, you now have video classes, you have online classes, you can follow them on Twitter and on Instagram, and it's just so much more knowledge is available at our fingertips now than when I first started knitting, and it's amazing and it's awesome and it's wonderful. Sometimes I think that there's so much free information out there though that people don't always know where the good information is. There's a lot of bad information out there, let's be honest. Hopefully I'm not disseminating it. I think I'm doing okay. You'll let me know if I'm not. What is your biggest fail? What did you learn? Oh, my biggest fail. I can't find it. I try to find it for the video. I've been searching high and low for it. My biggest knitting fail that I can really point out and go, ooh, that didn't work the way I wanted it to, was a hat that I wanted to make. And I called it the taxi cab hat. And the mistake that I made with it was so common. So common. When I did the gauge swatch, I did it in a bad way. Let's just put it that way. I did it in a bad way. And it gave me an inaccurate gauge. And then when I went to go knit the hat, it was huge. It was ginormous. But I did learn from it. I learned that the way that I was gauging my swatches, doing gauge swatches in the round, was misleading me. So I found better ways to do it. So I learned a lot from it. And the other thing I learned from it was that while you're knitting, if you see that it's too big, it's probably too big. Because that was one of the things, was like, as I was knitting, going, God, I think I got the gauge wrong on this. I think I miscalculated something. There's something clearly off here. But I kept going instead of stopping. I sallied forth. But the good thing that came out of it was I really liked still the idea of the design, and I did have a success, which was this hat. And I love this hat so much. But I used double knit to make a reversible hat. So in this check pattern. And then here, this is linen stitch. And, you know, I calculated my decreases and I got a really nice decrease and a pretty crown, I think. But this is my taxi cab hat. I love this hat. And this hat was 100% the result of a fail. Okay, this next question, let's see if we can get through it without me crying. And that is, what is your biggest knitting heartbreak? Spoiler alert, involves moths. When I was getting married, I'm Jewish, husband's Jewish, we were having a Jewish wedding, and in the Jewish wedding, you have what's called the chuppah. And the chuppah is, it's like a canopy, you know, that's supposed to represent like your future home and various things. For my chuppah canopy, I was like, I'm going to design and knit it myself. And I did. I designed this pattern where there'd be these Star of David motifs amongst some lace knitting. And I knitted this 5 feet by 5 feet canopy in fingering weight yarn on like the smallest needles I could find, basically. It was huge. It was 5 feet by 5 feet, gorgeous. This really lovely blue variegated yarn. It's just so, it's one of the most, I feel like it's one of the most amazing things I ever knitted, truth be told. Long story short, I had the chuppah frame, that my canopy that was gonna go on top of, provided by the florist, and I told the florist, like, I want people to be able to see this canopy that I knit. I'm like, I hand knit this thing. I want people to see it. Well, I'm coming down the aisle and you can see it in my wedding video. You can see this moment in my wedding video where I'm smiling and I look so happy, and I stop and I go, son of a bitch. Because you could not see the canopy. It was a beautiful chuppah. The flowers were gorgeous. Nobody could see my canopy. Nobody could see it. Nobody could freaking see the canopy that I spent months knitting on size 000 needles. It's okay, it's fine. because when I stood under the canopy with my husband, now husband, and I looked up, I saw it. It was so beautiful. I was so happy. I'm like, it's enough that I see it. It's enough that Mike sees it. We'll have photos of it from the photographer, because I told the photographer, make sure you photograph my chuppah canopy. Photographer. My photographer was wonderful. I would recommend my photographer to anybody who ever asked me, but he didn't photograph my canopy. My 5 foot by 5 foot canopy made in stock weight yarn on size 000 needles. Because I'm insane. That's okay, I had a canopy. It's going to be an heirloom piece. Something I could pass down to my child if they wanted to use my canopy in their wedding one day. And this is the part that makes me want to cry, and I get very emotional about. Maud's got to it. This one, oh my god, I can't even make a joke about this. This just hurts. This story just hurts. It's really hard for me to talk about it. I don't know, maybe there's some like karmic justice in it. I took too much pride in it, and the knitting gods punished me for it because, like, yeah. But I have the memory. I do have the memory of standing underneath the chuppah with my husband, looking up, seeing it, and it was a beautiful moment, and I have that memory forever. So that's something good, but oh my god, it kills me when I think about it. Oh, all right, next question. This is like too sad. This is too sad for me. Okay, circulars or straights? Circulars 100 all day, every day. I love my circular needles. I can sing about them. You can use them for any situation. What is something that you thought you would never knit, but now you love knitting? This I definitely have an answer to, and that is socks. OMG. I, for the longest time, resisted learning how to knit socks. For the longest time. I'm like, I don't care about knitting socks. For some reason, I just say, you know what? Let me take a class to learn how to knit a sock. And I was like, oh my god, sock knitting is the best. Sock knitting is like this project. There are stretches when you knit a sock that are very straightforward and you don't have to do a whole lot of thinking, but then you get to really interesting sections like the heel turn or when it's time to decrease for the toe. But the other thing I really liked about socks was like there's so many different techniques to learn. Like there's more than one way to make a heel. There's more than one way to go about shaping the toe. You can knit up, you can knit cuff down, you can knit toe up. And I liked all the things that I could learn with sock knitting. So I really just liked that about, oh my god, I did it again! Oh! Ugh. I was supposed to knit lace. I was supposed to do eyelets, and I just started knitting stockinette again. This is what happens when you try to talk and knit a project at the first time. Ugh. All right, let's get through the rest of these questions. What knitting technique do you hate? I don't know if I hate any knitting technique. I'm not a big fan of intarsia. It's fine, I can do it, I know how to do it, I can do it well. But I think intarsia projects just don't appeal to me. It's like I conquered that hill, I know how to do it, I don't know if I ever need to do it again. That's how I feel about intarsia. What's your least favorite part of the knitting process? Oh, easy, weaving in ends. I hate weaving in ends. Well, hate's such a strong word. Do I hate it? Hate it? I don't hate it. It's just the thing that I drag my feet on the most. Do you play Yarn Chicken? Of course I play Yarn Chicken. I'm a knitter. Like, if you knit, at some point you're going to play Yarn Chicken. Sometimes I've won, sometimes I've lost, but, you know, that's the life of a knitter. Sometimes you play Yarn Chicken. What do you do in knitting that gives other knitters a heart palpitations? Okay, what? I like this question. Probably knitting cotton on metal needles. I do not like my cotton yarn sticking to the needles. I want them to fly off my needles, and I feel very comfortable knitting cotton on metal needles, so yeah. What do you wish you knew about knitting before you started? How addictive it is? But I love how addictive it is. I love how calming it is. I love how meditative it is. I love that there's always something new to learn in it, so I'm good with not having known that. Worst advice you ever got about knitting? What is the worst advice I ever got about knitting? Oh, I know. I recently talked about this in a video. I think the worst advice I ever got about knitting was about joining in the round, and that eventually, like, if you don't do anything, there's going to be this gap at the bottom, but don't worry about it. It'll just sort itself out. I think that might have been some of the worst advice I ever got about knitting, because it just wasn't, at least for me, it wasn't true. I think that overall I've been very fortunate in my knitting life to have talked with very, like, knowledgeable people and overall gotten good advice. I've seen a lot of bad advice out there. Don't swatch, don't worry about it, it's unnecessary. Bad advice. Look, if you choose not to swatch, that is I'm not gonna say it's an invalid choice, okay? All I'm gonna say is, like, there are consequences, there are potential consequences to that choice. Know what they are. And if you're telling someone else, oh, don't worry about swatching, you need to tell them what the potential consequences are. But simply going out there and saying something like, oh, I've been knitting for 50 years and I've never swatched a thing. Well, you know what? Knitting for 50 years doesn't validate that choice. And I'm not saying it's an invalid choice not to swatch. I'm just saying your years of experience for not swatching is not in and of itself a defense of not swatching. That's all I'm saying. And, you know, don't advise someone that they don't need to swatch, that it's an unnecessary step, unless you're willing to also warn them, like, but be prepared that if you're wanting to make fitted garments that fit you, you may not succeed in that if you don't do a gauge swatch. Like, that's my thing about it. That's my thing about it. Last, what is the best advice you ever got about knitting? The best advice I ever got about knitting was to be adventurous. And I guess that's my advice to all y'all, too, with knitting, is be adventurous, stretch yourself. You're the boss of your knitting. You get to do the way you want to do it. But if you see something out there that you want to make, don't be afraid of trying to make it, because you might fail. And I think that's the best advice. Okay, that's it. I am at the end of my glass of happy fun time drink. So that's it. Those are my 20 or more questions. See how this edits down, but that is my 20 questions or more for knitters. Is there any question that you have that you wish I had answered or asked myself during this video? Because this was fun. I'd be happy to do another video like this. Let me know down in the comments below any questions that you have, or let me know the answers to some of my questions. I will put the questions that I asked in the video in the description box. So if you want to, you know, answer any of them, I would love to hear about it down in the comments below. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your other knitting friends or crafting friends, anyone you think might be interested in this video. Liking videos, sharing videos, commenting on videos helps YouTube know that this is a space worth checking out, and then I get recommended to other knitters and we can help grow this community together. So thank you again so much for joining me. I hope that you have a wonderful day, evening, weekend, weeknight, whenever you may be watching this, and as always, happy health and happy knitting. Bye!